Mike Brennan, another segment on MITech TV. Longtime contributor Richard Stiennon, one of our cybersecurity buddies. Richard and I go back to his RustNet days and even wrote a cybercrime novella 15 years ago now, Richard. Do you
Is
believe
it really?
that?
No.
Amazing, huh? One of the things he brought to my attention that I missed this week or last week is the Mythos. The Mythos preview?
Right.
Let's talk a little about that. You're saying that's really hot topic right now, and
Yeah,
if
yeah.
I'm not up to speed on it, I suspect a lot of other people aren't either. So go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. And backstory, if you've been paying attention, the predictions made by an organization that named their study AI 2027 are coming true. They predicted last April that by this time frame there would be a massive acceleration in the improvement in new models from the foundational foundry labs, and that's happening. It started. We started seeing what was possible around Christmas time, and then in early February, both OpenAI and Anthropic released their latest versions, and it was step function above anything anybody had seen before. So these models are being trained by themselves. So it's self-learning, they call it, and they're and the researchers that are being applied to it are actually AI agents. So slowly, not slowly, the research organizations are building AI bots, agents, in order to replace their researchers and do a better job so they can do more faster. And they are. So February latest release, right? And usually these releases occur 6 months to 12 months apart. So it was only April when Mythos preview came out. So Mythos was meant to be the next general purpose model. They didn't train it in anything specifically, just more training to get a better general purpose AI. But they tried it on, because it's been a hot topic lately, they tried it on discovering vulnerabilities. And within several weeks, they discovered thousands of new vulnerabilities. And that has given pause not only to Anthropic, but the entire industry as we start to question, what does this mean? So just to give you a scope, right? So there are about 45,000 new vulnerabilities discovered and cataloged every year and given a CVE number by MITRE. So it's kind of the state we're at, and this is going to be very familiar to you and Matt because this feels a lot like vulnerability or viruses back in the early, say, 2008 kind of time frame. We went from a couple viruses a week to many, many viruses a day to 60,000 viruses a day. And that whole infrastructure for pushing virus signatures out to all the endpoints up to 6 times a day by some of the antivirus vendors just collapsed. It just couldn't handle it. It was just not working anymore. There's no way you, as an antivirus company, you could research and find the new signature and push it to your customers before they needed it. So nothing was working. That gave rise to, the creation of new solutions like CrowdStrike or Sentinel-1, and really the kind of the death of the traditional AV industry. That was a big time. Is that happening again? Because if Anthropic was able to create thousands of new vulnerabilities in a period of weeks, I estimate that they alone could account for 15,000 new vulnerabilities a year, so 30% of an additional 30% on top of what's already discovered every year. And all it takes is several groups using the same techniques, and all of a sudden we could see 10x the number of vulnerabilities. Well, what do we do with that? Every single large organization takes all the vulnerabilities, often, and then they scan their entire network and see where those vulnerabilities exist on their network, and then they go, ooh, all the desktops in the organization, all the laptops, all the servers have to be patched as soon as the patch is available, and we got to schedule them for downtime and do that. So it's a super, super onerous task that has always been fruitless because nobody can actually get to no vulnerabilities. They never get to that pristine state. And that's only going to be exacerbated with this new stuff. So the SEC has sounded the alarm, and they've called a bunch of CISOs to come together and figure out what's going to happen here. The Cloud Security Alliance has called together 250 CISOs and created a white paper that came out today on what you should do. Um, the stock market keeps crashing for cybersecurity companies. They think, for some strange reason, the Wall Street thinks that more vulnerabilities means less business for Zscaler or Palo Alto Networks or CrowdStrike, which is crazy, right? It's the exact opposite is true. There, if there's more vulnerabilities, there are more breaches, and that means more spending on security. So this is a windfall for cybersecurity. So if you're a betting person who invests in stocks, now's the time to buy whatever, Zscaler, CrowdStrike, any of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us a little bit, if you could, about the recent collision between Anthropic and the Pentagon.
Yeah, so in light of now what's happened, right? So Anthropic, the Pentagon had some, standard language, and Anthropic said you won't be able to use, we're not going to comply, we're not going to sell to you if you won't agree not to use our language models for, you know, doing evil, right? Plotting attacks and killing people, right? They don't want to have anything to do with that. They don't want to be responsible for Skynet in the future. And so they, a lot of people thought that was posturing, whatever, but OpenAI just stepped right in because they've got no morals. And they'll do anything for anybody. And they just jumped right in there and got the big contract from the Pentagon.
Oh
Um,
boy.
we now realize that while the founder of OpenAI of Anthropic was making those statements, he knew full well what Mythos was capable of doing, and did not want to pass that capability off into the hands of the Pentagon wisely. Scary
It,
times.
so interesting. Well, Pentagon and all that. What else is going on there, that's top of news?
Oh, there was one other question I had, Richard, for you. This class action lawsuit involving all these authors whose works have been glommed onto
Yep.
by generative AI systems. Uh, does that mean anything? Does it matter? What's that going to mean going forward?
It. I don't think it matters. Anthropic's got plenty of money to pay. I'm a member of the Authors Guild, so and their attorneys are all over this and filed their own suit. So I get to see what they're thinking. I'm against the lawsuit in the first place, right? I think that if you think about it, they think, I don't know, and I can imagine how every literature author in the world could have zero comprehension about what a large language model is, right? It's just a big, big, long list of numbers between 0 and 1. That's all it is. There's not a single bit of text in there, right? And it was trained to learn English or whatever language on a bunch of text that hopefully was better written than the average blog post on Reddit. So those were used as well for training.
Hmm.
And if you think about it, all of the works of Shakespeare are in it. So we get some, really, really good impact on our language. All of the great works of anything that's out of copyright is already in it. So as an author, are you saying you would not want future AIs and future people using AIs to be influenced even in the tiniest bit by your thinking and your words that you've struggled so hard to put together? Or do you want to be forgotten to all of history? And the
Hmm.
authors are choosing, we'd rather be forgotten. So that's my take. The the award to each author is about $6,000 per book that was used to scan. I actually got a little excited because several of my books were in the repositories of pirated texts, but evidently not used in the training, so I don't get the windfall, which is fine. I'm okay with that. And besides that, my publisher would get a cut of that, right? You don't just get 100% of anything when you're working with a publisher. So
Sure, yeah.
who knows what would have happened there? Um, so yeah, and it's like they don't need that anymore. They've already got the models. The models can write stuff better than anybody who's written a book today. So they can just write their own stuff and use that to train themselves. So that part is done and gone, and it won't be needed again.
Hmm.
Right now one of the things that people think they're running out of is new stuff to train on. And if you think about it, text is a very, very minor part of the human existence, right? Just take a walk in the woods and everything you see and hear and feel and smell is, terabytes of data. If you could convert that into digital data, that's what's needed to train the next models. And they can get that, right? They can send a bunch of drones out. I don't know what they're going to do to get that, but they can do that. Maybe every webcam with a microphone will be used, right? Because it'll watch how people interact
Interesting.
and walk.
That would be interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
So, any hacking? Well, or anything big like that that you want to talk about? I know last year was ransomware was the big thing. Is that still going on?
It's still going on. It hasn't stopped. A recent report said, I think 3 ransomware groups are responsible for, I think it was 60% of all ransomware right now. So that's still going on. Obviously, the big stuff we're looking for is anything to do with AI being used. And if you think about it, the example of Anthropic using AI to find vulnerabilities is very much a threat, right? It's like what a hacker would do. Anthropic, or the new model, is capable of not only finding the vulnerability, which is hard to do and takes expertise, which it's better than just about anybody at, but it can chain together vulnerabilities into an exploit, which is the really astounding thing. So in other words, it's as if you had access to this thing and there weren't guardrails to prevent you from doing it, as I'm sure the intelligence community already has, you could task it with, break into Michael Brennan's Gmail account and, steal whatever from him. And it could go and it could find a vulnerability in Google just to exploit to get into your email account. Or it could, listen in on your conversations and figure out the name of your dog and guess your password, right? He was smart enough to try everything. So that is what we're afraid of happening. There are some claims of AI assisting. AI is for sure being used across the board for deep fakes, so mimicking people via email or even video on Zoom calls like this. And those are there are more and more examples of them. It's not at the same stage that ransomware was at, but that'll be coming as well. You won't be able to. I think everybody's learning. Anybody who's on social media is learning that video is probably faked. If it's
Oh,
too
sure.
cool, it's faked, right? There are influencers on Instagram who are just fake, that completely made up. Some old guy on a farm talking about health benefits or whatever. It's totally
I see on Facebook people that are endorsing products, and at first you go, why would they endorse that product? And then you realize, oh, I know, I'm looking at a fake.
right, right.
Yeah, and the this recent moonshot that we had engendered a whole bunch of fake stuff on Facebook that I saw.
Yeah,
Views of the launch from the International Space Station or airliners. I guess one
nice.
actually was real from an airliner,
Right.
and views of the reentry, that kind of thing. A lot of that stuff was just obvious. Well, I mean, it looked realistic, but it was obviously a fake because no one could be in that position.
Right.
So,
Right. Yep. Yep. Yeah, it's hilarious. That's we're just going to see more and more of that. But humans at the end of the day are smart, right? There's enough people who fall for stuff. If our parents were still alive, we'd have to worry about them. But
yeah.
um,
That's why I'm
the
glad my wife's mom does not have internet
yeah,
access.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, right. Should.
She's 84. God love her, but
Oh, that's young. Come on. She should be all over that internet thing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
One thing I did want to ask you about is I keep seeing these scary memes also on social media about what happens when quantum computing is finally figured out and can unlock any lock that there is. Is that actually a prospect, or can quantum computing help us create better locks?
Well, yeah. There's already post-quantum encryption available, and you get
Mhm.
it now for the same cost of any other encryption. And it is not susceptible to being cracked by quantum mechanics, right? Quantum math that goes into the computers. But on the other hand, I am a quantum skeptic. I don't think that quantum computing will be a thing in our lifetime. And it's just based on, all my experience with technology revolutions, right? If you think about it, I think the transistor was invented in 1939. It took from 39 to when I was born, so that's 20 years, plus,
54, I think,
yeah,
was the original Bell Labs working version. Yeah.
yeah. And by, the first processor, Intel processor was in the, late 70s, early 80s, right? So 30, 40, 50 years for it to be miniaturized and used practically in a radio even. So, okay, if first of all, quantum computing as an engineering science attempt is much older than that already. We've been trying to do this for a long, 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 long time. And right now, instead of a transistor gate that's set to 1 and 0, there's a probabilistic gate that is called a qubit instead of a bit. And a qubit is as big as a chandelier in a West Bloomfield mansion. And it's got to be kept at the temperature of 0.3 degrees Kelvin, colder than anywhere else in the universe.
Wow.
So, how is that going to turn into a computer that does anything? Because it takes over, now the estimate is it'll take over 1 million of those in order to just do error correction on the calculations that a couple more do. Because the errors are all over. Anyways, it's just insurmountable problem, not going to be solved. So, and yet there'll be companies that, make promises. And I got approached by somebody who said they do post quantum with quantum computing. They actually use it. I go, no, you don't. No, you don't. Now, there is a quantum device that measures the spin in an electron or in a photon, and the spin could be up or down, right? So it just uses whether it's up or down as a random number generator, which is needed for encryption. So it's great. So you got a really fancy random number generator using light photons as the medium, right? There's other ways to get random noise. It doesn't have to be as good as that. Decay of the radioactive material, that's random.
Okay,
Well,
so you're not concerned about quantum computing taking over at any time in the
No,
reasonably near future.
yep, will not happen. Now, of course, AI is getting to the point where we can ask it to help us with some really difficult problems. So maybe if the quantum researchers are using AI to design their experiments, maybe they can get over some humps. But it's, even that doesn't lend itself. Um, Large language models are really, really good at solving problems if you can state the problem mathematically. Um, they're, but they're not really good at invention yet. They will be, but they're not now. For instance, for material science, which is, I've always been disappointed since my college days that material science is alchemy, right? Nobody actually says, you know what, if we add 1 molecule per crystalline structure of niobium to the steel, we'll get something that's 3 times stronger and 10% stiffer. Nobody knows the math to be able to do that. They just try it and then test it. And it's possible that AI could help try all the possible combinations of materials and come up with new materials. I think that's already happening. It's certainly happening with medicines. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay, so
exciting
maybe
times.
that's how we get that Star Trek transparent aluminum stuff, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay.
That's coming. I mean, that's
well, I
yeah.
mean, it was on Star Trek. It's true, right? So,
Right.
Or I'm not sure
Well,
if this.
they did get tablets and cell phones right, but
Yeah.
we're still waiting on a lot of
Did
other stuff.
did the Simpsons predict it? That's what's really tell, right?
Ah.
Everything the Simpsons talks about happens.
Okay, so our next president then is Lisa Simpson after Trump.
Very possible. Very,
Okay.
very possible.
All right.
Yeah.
don't get me started on Trump, huh? So, all right. So,
We could talk about Hungary, and actually I could tie it all to cyber. You remember on this show was when I had the concept that if if Russia, completely falls apart and there's a regime change, that will impact the cybersecurity industry because ransomware will stop because people will be beholden to the law. So I think that's the same case with the crisis looming over Mythos, in that the real answer isn't for everybody to make perfect software, because that's impossible, right? That's just not going to happen. The real answer is that we have to restore international order and the rule of law. And that's something we
What a
all want
concept.
anyways. Once we do that, then there won't be cyber criminals as blatantly doing what they do. There still will be some, but they'll have to take steps to stay out of jail.
Yeah, a lot of that's still coming out of China, Russia, Eastern Europe.
They don't lump them all together. It's Russia and Russia's sphere of influence that causes most of it. A little tiny bit out of North Korea, Iran. There's hacking out of Iran, right? They're fighting back right now. They just took down 3 of the major organizations, including the post office and the legal system in United Arab Emirates, and they systematically wiped a bunch of volumes of disks belonging to, I think, the justice system, so the court system, to the tune of 194 terabytes.
Wow.
That could be pretty damaging.
I guess so.
Yeah.
How are you supposed to know what precedent is if it's not on the records?
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Oh, man.
Start over.
Have to resort back to those things called books, so.
Here. Speaking of books, I should pitch my latest book.
Oh, yes, that was
Well
your
done.
opening.
Well done.
Guardians of the Machine Age. So this is all about the AI security industry that's around us. When I completed it, there were 478 vendors. And then I promised in the book that, things are moving fast. There are already more vendors that I didn't have time to write up, so I'll post them in my Substack. So if you read my Substack today, you'll see that I used Claude Cowork in order to basically tie into our database. I just gave it a list of new vendors, and I went and grabbed the descriptions of all the vendors and turned it into a blog post. It did all the work while I was doing something else.
So you've already got an addendum up to the book. That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, then, of course, you have your dashboard. Since we're giving you a shameless plug, why don't we go into that as well?
So well, everything I do is to demonstrate the power of the dashboard, right? Which is a platform for getting access to data on 4,025 cybersecurity vendors and over 11,000 of their products. And you can do things like hook your Claude bot to it and have it talk to the dashboard and get the information you need and put it in a report, create a spreadsheet, and do whatever analysis you want on it. So it gives you superpowers if you do any sort of research into the cybersecurity industry. You can tell what's coming. It's like, why not use API access? So that's what I'll be testing next. And then why not have an MPC server and make it inexpensive for your Claude bot or whatever bot you're using to access the data and charge as you go instead of an annual subscription.
A user fee, as it were.
User fee, a usage fee.
A usage fee, yes.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So as long as it's, you don't want it to be more than the Claude bot. So Claude Cowork is a bot essentially that sits on your desktop, gives you access to Claude Code in regular Claude. You just talk to it. Costs $20 a month. So maybe for an extra $10 a month, the researcher would want to have access to our dashboard, so you can make fancy reports. I mean, I can create my own report on a topic area in less than an hour, and for pennies. And if you want to buy that report from Markets and Markets, it's going to cost $10,000. So pretty good value proposition.
Okay.
Okay.
Any
All right.
final
Thanks so
thoughts?
much, Richard. Once again, tell people how to reach you as we close out here.
Yeah. Reach out to me on LinkedIn, Stiennon, Stiennon, and you'll find me there. And then from there, if you're following me on LinkedIn, you'll see everything I do because I don't stay quiet.
Okay. Thank you so much, Richard Stiennon, our resident security expert. Thanks for being with us here today. This is, as always, a fun little discussion.
Thanks, Matt.